Earth trimmed ties with the Galaxy Council and left the universe in panic became reality when Dr. Zara Lynn revealed the shocking truth. Humans had secretly maintained galactic systems for decades. The council chamber fell silent as evidence emerged of 30 hidden human colonies scattered across the stars. Chancellor Vexar's scales darkened with rage. Earth wasn't just defiant, but technologically superior all along. The grand chamber of the Centauri Prime Galactic Council stretched upward in a sweeping dome, its transparent panels revealing the dance of 3 moons against a lavender sky. Beneath this majestic ceiling, representatives of over 200 species filled the circular tiers, their bodies in all shapes and sizes creating a living tapestry of galactic diversity. Some floated in suspension tanks. Others required specialized atmosphere chambers, while many humanoid forms sat comfortably in the standardized seats designed for bipedal species. Ambassador Maya Harrison of Earth maintained perfect posture in her seat at the middle tier, reserved for relatively new members of the galactic community. 60 years since Earth's invitation to join might seem substantial in human terms, but in the Council, where some civilizations measured their membership in millennia, humans remained the newcomers. She adjusted the translation module at her ear, a small courtesy since her neural implant already provided perfect translation. The small gesture was calculated, a reminder to the Council that humans still honored traditional protocols. Maya's dark blue diplomatic uniform contrasted with her predecessor's preference for flamboyant attire. Ambassador Jake Morrison had been known for his theatrical approach, but after his retirement, Earth's delegation had shifted toward a more reserved posture. Maya's approach was methodical, principled, and deceptively calm. Beneath her measured expressions and carefully chosen words burned a resolve that few alien species had learned to recognize in humans. Today's session had begun like many others: procedural votes, trade disputes between minor systems, and reports on cosmic phenomena affecting interstellar routes. But Maya's attention remained fixed on item 5502 on the agenda. Intelligence operatives on Earth had reported rumors about this resolution for months, but even their most pessimistic predictions hadn't captured the full scope of what was coming. Chancellor Vexar, the imposing Vorax leader, with his characteristic purple scales and impressive height of nearly 3 meters, called the final item to order. His species' natural authority had helped them secure leadership positions throughout the Council's bureaucracy over centuries. Their world had mastered space travel when humans were still struggling with internal combustion engines. "We come now to Resolution 5502, Vexar announced, his translator giving his rumbling voice a clipped, precise quality. "The Resource Allocation and Technology Supervision Framework." The Council chamber quieted as holograms appeared at each representative's station. Maya's eyes narrowed as she scanned the document, its 70-page length already a warning sign. Most Council resolutions were concise, focused on specific regulations or agreements. This sprawling document contained clauses touching on virtually every aspect of member worlds' governance. As she speed-read through the legalese, her heart rate increased. A hidden recording device in her ceremonial brooch captured every word and instantly transmitted the data through encrypted channels back to Earth. "This framework," continued Vexar, "addresses growing concerns about resource distribution imbalances and technology proliferation risks. The Council's economic assessment committees have determined that sustainable growth requires more structured oversight of developing worlds' resource utilization." Maya's eyes caught on Section 17.3. Member worlds classified as Developmental Category 3 or lower shall contribute no less than 70% of rare element extraction to the Council resource pool. Earth was classified as Category 2. Her gaze jumped to Section 42.6. All prototype technologies and research initiatives must receive prior approval from the Technology Oversight Committee before implementation. A committee dominated by Vorax, Mechanoid, and Centurion representatives And finally, Section 59.8. Administrative authority over planetary defense systems shall be maintained through Council security interfaces. It was nothing less than a complete surrender of Earth's sovereignty. The resolution would transform their world from an independent member into a resource colony, stripped of technological autonomy and military self-determination. Maya's training had prepared her for difficult negotiations. But this wasn't a negotiation. It was an ultimatum disguised as bureaucratic procedure. Chancellor Vexar was already calling for the vote, rushing through what should have been at least a day's worth of debate. The pattern was clear now. Representatives from Category 1 worlds were nodding in agreement, while those from lower categories looked confused or concerned. This had been planned, coordinated in private sessions from which Earth and other newer members had been excluded. Maya pressed the speaker request button on her console. Protocol required the Chancellor to acknowledge all requests before proceeding to a vote. Vexar's eyes narrowed slightly as he noticed the request. But Council procedures were being recorded and observed. The Council recognizes Ambassador Harrison of Earth. Maya stood, her movement deliberate and unhurried. The chamber's acoustic design carried her voice clearly, without amplification. Chancellor, distinguished representatives, I speak not only for Earth, but potentially for all worlds classified below Category 1. Her tone was measured, respectful. Resolution 5502 represents the most significant restructuring of member responsibilities since the Council's founding. Such fundamental changes require thorough examination and debate. Vexar's mouth twitched in what Maya had learned was a Vorax expression of annoyance. The resolution has been available for review by all members for the standard 3-day period. With respect, Chancellor, this document was released to Category 2 and 3 delegations precisely 48 hours ago, not the standard 72. More importantly, its implications are profound enough to warrant extended consultation with our home governments. A murmur spread through the chamber. Several representatives from other developing worlds nodded in agreement. Earth respectfully requests a postponement of this vote for 30 days to allow proper assessment. Vexar's scales darkened slightly, a physiological reaction to stress that his species had never fully mastered concealing. The Council's calendar is quite full. Ambassador, delays would impact numerous other important matters. More important than fundamentally altering the relationship between the Council and nearly 40% of its member worlds? Maya allowed a hint of steel to enter her voice. Chancellor, I must insist on following proper procedure for changes of this magnitude. The mechanoid representative, a gleaming construct of precision engineering named Designate XR7, activated its speaker. Statistical analysis indicates the resolution has sufficient support for passage, regardless of procedural delays. Efficiency dictates immediate processing. Maya had expected this. The alliance between biological and mechanical civilizations at the Council's upper tiers had grown stronger in recent years, united by their shared interest in maintaining hierarchical control. Then let the voting record show which representatives chose to rush through a measure that would essentially colonize dozens of worlds without adequate review. Maya's words were carefully chosen to remind the neutral members of the Council's history, how it had evolved from centuries of conflict between expansionist empires and independence movements. A subtle shift rippled through the chamber. Several representatives who had been prepared to vote with the majority now looked uncertain. Vexar recognized the danger and moved to cut off debate. The concerns of Earth are noted but deemed insufficient for delay. We shall proceed to the vote. Maya stood perfectly still as the voting interface activated on all consoles. This was the moment of decision, the culmination of years of contingency planning back on Earth. The intelligence reports, the fears, and the preparations had all led to this crossroads. She pressed the emergency signal on her wrist communicator. 3 quick pulses, followed by one long, 5,000 light-years away. in a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. That signal would trigger a sequence that had been prepared for over a decade. As representatives began registering their votes, Maya's voice cut through the murmuring chamber with startling clarity. Earth rejects Resolution 5502 and hereby withdraws from all treaties and agreements with the Galactic Council. Effective immediately. The chamber erupted in shock. Species with vocal capabilities produced a cacophony of sounds, while those communicating through other means generated visual displays of agitation or surprise. Chancellor Vexar's scales flared to a deep purple of rage. "Ambassador Harrison, you have no authority to make such a declaration." Maya's smile was thin but confident. "My authority was granted by unanimous vote of Earth's unified government precisely for this contingency. The transmission of the resolution's full text to Earth 20 minutes ago has triggered our withdrawal protocols." She unpinned her official council badge and placed it deliberately on her console. "Earth entered this council as equals. We will not remain as subjects." With that, she turned and walked steadily toward the chamber's exit, ignoring the chaos erupting behind her. As the doors closed behind her, she heard Vexar shouting for security to detain her. But the Centauri Prime security forces, accustomed to ceremonial duties rather than diplomatic incidents, hesitated just long enough for her to reach the Earth delegation's private shuttle. The pilot, Captain Amelia Santos, had already received the emergency signal and had the engines primed for immediate departure. "Get us to the jump gate as quickly as possible," Maya instructed as she strapped into her seat. "We have approximately 17 minutes before they override the diplomatic immunity protocols." Santos nodded grimly and guided the shuttle out of its berth with practiced precision. "The Harmony is waiting at the rendezvous point, Ambassador." The Harmony, Earth's newest diplomatic vessel, maintained its position just beyond Centauri Prime's orbital jurisdiction. Captain Santos piloted the shuttle with increasing urgency as warning signals began flashing on her console. "They're activating the security grid," she reported. "Trying to lock us down." Maya nodded calmly. "Exactly as expected. Proceed with Emergency Protocol Sigma 7. Santos reached beneath her console and pressed a recessed button. The shuttle's external appearance wavered as the advanced holographic system activated, transforming their vessel's signature to match that of a Rigelian diplomatic craft, a species whose notoriously complex bureaucracy would cause just enough confusion to buy them precious minutes. They reached the Harmony without incident, docking in the specialized bay that immediately closed and secured behind them. Commander Adam Reeves greeted Maya as she stepped aboard. "The quantum barrier activation sequence is prepared. Ambassador, Earth awaits your confirmation." Maya removed a small device from her inner pocket, a quantum-entangled communicator that couldn't be intercepted or blocked. "This is Ambassador Harrison. Authentication code, Prometheus Unbound. Activate Operation Firewall." Miles beneath the Colorado Mountains on Earth, in a facility known only to a handful of government officials, Dr. Helen Rodriguez watched as the authentication code appeared on her screen. Next to her, General Carl Johnson nodded solemnly. "Begin the sequence," he ordered. Dr. Rodriguez's fingers moved across her specialized interface. Quantum barrier generators powering up, gravitational anchors online, dimensional fold stabilizers active. Throughout the Sol system, invisible technology that had been positioned over decades activated simultaneously. The barrier didn't materialize in a dramatic visual display. Its effects operated on quantum levels, beyond visual perception. But its results would soon become evident throughout the galaxy. On the Harmony, Maya watched the status indicators on her secure tablet. Barrier integrity at 100%. All solar system access points secured. Commander Reeves looked solemn. "We're officially isolated, Ambassador. No one gets in or out except through our controlled gateways." "And now we wait for the universe to notice," Maya replied. They didn't have to wait long. The Vorax patrol fleet was the first to discover the barrier. Commander Zalan, leading 3 battlecruisers on a direct course to the Sol system, expected to reach Earth orbit within hours and establish temporary security oversight, effectively an occupation force. Approaching Sol system boundary, reported his navigation officer. Expected transition to Earth space in 3 minutes. Zalan straightened in his command chair. This mission would cement his position in the Vorax hierarchy, being the officer who brought the troublesome humans to heel. Weapon systems on standby. Remember, this is to be a show of force only. The Council wants the humans intimidated, not destroyed. Sir, we're encountering something. The science officer's voice held confusion. Sensors indicate a quantum disturbance along the entire approach vector. Zalan moved to the science station, his towering form looming over the officer. Explain. It appears to be some kind of barrier, but operating on principles I've never seen before. It's not a conventional shield or defensive array. Zalan's training hadn't prepared him for this. Can we penetrate it? The officer's hands moved across the controls, initiating various scanning protocols. I can't even properly analyze it. The barrier seems to exist partially outside normal space-time. Nonsense, Zalan growled. Increase power to forward shields and proceed. The battlecruiser surged forward, its massive engines pushing against the invisible barrier. For a moment, it seemed they might push through. Then alarms blared across the command deck. Drive systems overloading. The barrier is reflecting our own energy back at us, amplified. Pull back! All ships withdraw, Zalan ordered. But it was too late for seamless retreat. The flagship shuddered violently as its propulsion system short-circuited. The 2 accompanying vessels managed to reverse course, but not before suffering significant damage to their forward sections. As they limped away from the Sol system, Zalan stared at the sensor readings in disbelief. Earth, the upstart, the newcomer, the supposed technological inferior, had somehow created an impenetrable barrier around their entire star system. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as various species attempted to make contact with Earth. Mechanoid data probes disintegrated upon contact with the barrier. Botanian telepathic explorers reported a wall of quantum static that prevented any mental penetration. Even the ancient and mystical Zerion, whose technology sometimes bordered on the supernatural, found their dimensional shifting abilities completely nullified near Sol space. The effects spread beyond mere access denial. Within days, interstellar navigation systems began experiencing cascading failures. Jump gates, the backbone of galactic transportation, reported inconsistent mass calculations. Ships emerged from hyperspace at wrong coordinates, sometimes dangerously close to stellar bodies. On the Council hub world of Alpha Point, Dr. Zara Lin, the station's chief systems analyst, worked frantically to address a growing crisis. The medical database had suddenly developed critical errors, rendering treatment protocols for dozens of species unreliable. I don't understand, she muttered to her assistant, a young Centran named Kelvis. These systems have been stable for centuries. How could they all begin failing simultaneously? Kelvis's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep concentration in his species. The timing coincides precisely with Earth's isolation event. That's correlation, not causation, Dr. Lin countered, but without much conviction. The evidence was becoming harder to dismiss. As they worked, more reports flooded in. The trading network's value calculation algorithms had destabilized, causing market crashes across 6 sectors. Environmental control systems on numerous space stations had begun cycling irregularly. And, most alarmingly, a previously unknown digital infection dubbed Plague X was systematically corrupting data repositories throughout Council space. On Centauri Prime, Chancellor Vexar called an emergency session of the High Council, the inner circle of the most powerful and advanced civilizations. This cannot be coincidence, he declared, his normally controlled voice tinged with urgency. Somehow, the humans are responsible for these cascading failures. The mechanoid representative's optical sensors pulsed. Analysis: improbable. Earth technological capabilities have been thoroughly monitored since their admission. They lack the advanced knowledge required for such widespread disruption. Then, how do you explain this? Vexar projected a holographic display showing the spreading system failures. The correlation is undeniable. The Batanian elder, her translucent skin revealing the complex neural network beneath, spoke with characteristic thoughtfulness. Perhaps we have underestimated them. It would not be the first time a council member concealed their true capabilities. Or perhaps, added the Zarian seer, his ancient voice barely above a whisper, we have overestimated our own understanding of them. Vexar's frustration manifested in the darkening of his scales. Theories do not solve our immediate problem. Can we penetrate their barrier and force them to cease this attack? The silence that followed was answer enough. Then we must consider more drastic measures. Vexar continued. If we cannot reach them directly, perhaps we can target their colonial outposts beyond the Sol system. We have attempted this, the mechanoid reported. All known human settlements appear to have been evacuated prior to the barrier activation. Moreover, our records of their exact locations seem to have been compromised. This revelation sent a new wave of unease through the chamber. The humans had not only prepared their defense, but had systematically erased their vulnerabilities from council databases. How is that possible? Demanded Vexar. Our security protocols have apparently been insufficient, finished the Batanian elder. Which raises a more disturbing question. What else might they have accessed without our knowledge? The council's attention turned to Dr. Zara Lin, who had been summoned to provide her analysis. The systems specialist looked exhausted, her normally meticulous appearance disheveled after days without proper rest. Honored Council, my team has discovered something troubling, she began. We've been analyzing the pattern of system failures and have identified a common factor. Each affected system contains self-correcting algorithms developed over the past 60 years. Explain the significance, Vexar demanded. These algorithms were designed to identify and repair coding errors automatically. They've been fundamental to maintaining stability across our integrated systems. Dr. Lin paused, visibly uncomfortable with her next revelation. What we've discovered is that these algorithms bear distinct signatures of human programming methodologies. The chamber erupted in confused discussion. That's impossible, declared a Vorax counselor. Humans have been contributors to our technological base. Certainly, but minor ones. These systems predate their membership. Yes and no, Dr. Lin continued. The basic frameworks existed before, but the self-repair functions, the very components now failing, were gradually implemented after humans joined the Council. They were presented as collaborative developments, but our analysis suggests the core concepts originated from Earth. Are you suggesting the humans deliberately planted vulnerabilities throughout our infrastructure? Vexar's voice had dropped to a dangerous rumble. Not vulnerabilities, Dr. Lin corrected. Improvements. Genuine improvements that made our systems more efficient and reliable. But improvements that, apparently, required periodic maintenance from their creators. Maintenance we never knew was occurring because the systems appeared to be self-sustaining. The Zarian seer's ancient eyes closed in what might have been respect. They did not sabotage us. They supported us. And now that support has been withdrawn. That cannot be the full explanation, Vexar insisted. The scale of these failures suggests deliberate attack. Dr. Lin shook her head. My analysis indicates otherwise. These aren't attacks but entropy. The natural degradation of complex systems without maintenance. It's as if someone who had been quietly fixing our problems for decades suddenly stopped. The implications settled heavily on the Council. If Dr. Lin was correct, the humans hadn't just isolated themselves. They had been the invisible caretakers of galactic infrastructure. Their contributions systematically undervalued and unrecognized. The Batanian elder's voice carried a note of revelation. The resolution. They saw it as a betrayal, a demand for submission from a species that had been silently supporting us all along. Preposterous. Vexar dismissed, but with less certainty than before. They are newcomers, barely out of their planetary cradle. Perhaps chronologically, the elder replied, but there are many forms of maturity. As the council debated, a junior analyst rushed into the chamber, a breach of protocol that would normally result in severe consequences. But the data she carried silenced any reprimand. "Forgive the intrusion," she gasped, "but we've discovered active communication signals between Earth and other human settlements." "Impossible," Vexar declared. "Their colonies are known and monitored." "These aren't in our records," the analyst continued. "We only detected them because the quantum barrier occasionally thins for microseconds, allowing brief signal transmission. Based on the distribution and signal characteristics, there appear to be at least 30 independent human civilizations scattered throughout the galaxy, some in regions we considered uninhabitable." The council chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. Not only had Earth concealed its true technological capabilities, but it had also been establishing a hidden network of colonies, a shadow human civilization existing alongside the council-recognized galactic community. "How long?" Vexar finally asked, his voice unnaturally quiet. The analyst hesitated. "Based on settlement development markers, at least 40 years, possibly longer." 40 years. Nearly as long as Earth had been a council member. Their supposed integration into galactic society had been accompanied by a parallel, hidden expansion. "They've been preparing for this possibility from the beginning," the Batanian elder realized. "The moment they encountered the wider galaxy, they began establishing contingencies in case relations soured." "This is an unprecedented security breach," Vexar declared. "We must respond with maximum force. Every available fleet should—" "Should what, Chancellor?" interrupted the Zarian seer, his ancient voice cutting through Vexar's bluster. "Attack a barrier we cannot penetrate? Hunt colonies we cannot find? Repair systems we apparently never fully understood? We cannot simply do nothing." "Perhaps," offered the Batanian elder, "we should consider why they have done this. Not how to punish them, but what drove them to such measures." "Resolution 5502, the mechanoid, stated flatly. Statistical analysis indicates a 97.8% probability that our attempted resource appropriation triggered their withdrawal." Vexar's scales flushed dark with anger. "Are you suggesting we rescind a lawful council resolution because of this tantrum?" "I am stating a probability correlation," the mechanoid responded. "Policy implications are beyond my current analysis parameters." While the High Council debated, the ripple effects of Earth's isolation continued to spread. The galaxy's interconnected systems, long taken for granted, revealed their fragility. Transportation networks became unreliable. Communication delays grew. Medical facilities struggled with equipment failures. The sophisticated infrastructure that had supported countless civilizations began to show signs of collapse. Captain Ron Baker of the Vorax security fleet found himself in an increasingly desperate situation. His ship, patrolling the troubled Gamma sector, had experienced multiple critical systems failures over the past week. Life support was now operating at minimal capacity, and navigation had become so unreliable that they dared not attempt a jump to the nearest repair facility. "Status report," he demanded of his chief engineer. "Not good. Captain, environmental recyclers are down to 30% efficiency. At this rate, we have maybe 3 days of breathable atmosphere." Baker had served the fleet loyally for 20 years. He had enforced council dictates without question, believing in the natural hierarchy that placed Vorax near the top. But now, drifting in a failing ship with a crew looking to him for salvation, those certainties seemed less absolute. "Any response to our distress signals?" "None, sir. Communication buoys in this sector appear to be offline." Baker made a decision. Set course for Proxima Station. Conventional drives only. No jump attempts. Sir, that's a human outpost. Was a human outpost, Baker corrected. They've abandoned it since the isolation event. But their automated systems might still be operational. And if they're not? Baker didn't answer. They both knew the stakes. 3 days later, the Vorax vessel limped into Proxima Station's docking range. To their surprise, the automated systems not only functioned, but initiated standard docking procedures, as if nothing had changed. More surprising still was what they found inside. The station appeared recently abandoned, perhaps within the last few days, but was in perfect working order. Food synthesizers functioned. Life support operated at optimal levels. And in the central control room, they found something unexpected. Detailed repair manuals for every system on their vessel, written in perfect Vorax technical language. As Baker reviewed the materials, he felt a growing sense of unease. These weren't generic instructions. They were specifically tailored to the exact model and configuration of his ship, addressing the precise failures they had experienced. It was as if someone had anticipated their arrival and prepared accordingly. "Sir," his security officer called from a nearby console. "You should see this." The officer had accessed the station's communication logs. The last transmission, sent just before the abandonment, contained a simple message in the common galactic language. "We leave this station as a sanctuary for those in need. The choice to help others remains even when alliances falter. May you find what you require and reflect on why it was provided." Baker stared at the message for a long time. Then he ordered his crew to begin implementing the repair procedures. Similar scenarios played out across the galaxy. Abandoned human outposts became unexpected havens for stranded ships and desperate travelers. Each contained resources, repair facilities, and sometimes specific provisions for whoever might arrive. It wasn't universal salvation. The galaxy was too vast, and the outposts too few. But it created ripples of confusion and reflection among species that had long viewed humans as junior partners at best, potential resources at worst. On Earth, the unified government had convened an emergency session. The Great Chamber in New Geneva buzzed with tension as representatives from all nations awaited the president's address. The quantum barrier had isolated them from the galaxy, but it had not cut them off from their own scattered settlements, the hidden network of colonies established precisely for this contingency. President Sophia Okafor stood at the podium, her expression grave but determined. At 73, she had seen humanity's journey from planetary civilization to galactic participant. She had never fully trusted the Council's benevolence, authorizing the covert expansion and technology development programs that some had criticized as paranoid. Those critics were silent now. "Citizens of Earth and our sister settlements," she began, her voice carrying to billions across the protected communications network. 60 years ago, humanity reached the stars and discovered we were not alone. We joined the Galactic Council with hope and optimism, eager to become part of a greater community. The chamber was utterly silent. In the decades since, we have contributed our knowledge, our resources, and our unique perspective to that community. We have repaired their failing systems, enhanced their technologies, and stabilized their infrastructures, often without recognition or gratitude. Screens around the chamber displayed data from Dr. Helen Rodriguez's department, showing the thousands of critical repairs and improvements Earth specialists had quietly implemented throughout Council systems. "We did this not for acclaim, but because cooperation and mutual support are fundamental to our understanding of civilization. We believed that in time, the Council would recognize us as equals." President Okafor's expression hardened. Instead, they attempted to codify our subordination. Resolution 5502 would have reduced Earth to a resource extraction colony, stripped of technological autonomy and self-determination. It would have formalized a hierarchy of worlds that contradicts everything we believe about the rights of sentient beings. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Our withdrawal was not an impulsive reaction, but the implementation of a contingency we have prepared for decades. The quantum barrier will remain in place until the Council demonstrates meaningful reform. We do not seek to punish or control, only to protect our sovereignty and dignity. Around the world and across distant colonies, humans watch their president articulate the position that would define their civilization's path forward. To those in the galaxy now experiencing hardship due to systems failures, we regret your suffering. The repair protocols we maintained were genuine improvements, not sabotage. We have left sanctuary stations throughout traveled space with resources and knowledge for those in need. This is not an attack, but a withdrawal of support that was never properly acknowledged. The president's voice softened slightly. When the Council is ready to establish relations based on equality and mutual respect, we will be prepared to negotiate. Until then, we will focus on our own development and the well-being of our extended human family across the stars. As President Okafor's address concluded, the quantum barrier surrounding the Sol system briefly rippled with increased energy, a deliberate modulation that allowed her message to broadcast throughout Council space. On thousands of worlds, beings of countless forms and natures heard the human explanation for their actions. The reaction was not uniform. On Council core worlds, authorities attempted to dismiss the message as propaganda, but on planets and stations experiencing cascading failures, where human-designed systems had suddenly revealed their importance through their absence, the message found more receptive audiences. On Centauri Prime, Chancellor Vexar faced growing pressure from within the Council itself. The Botanian and Zarian representatives had officially withdrawn support for Resolution 5502, calling for its immediate rescission. Several mid-tier civilizations had formed a new voting bloc, demanding reforms to the Council's hierarchical structure. This is unprecedented rebellion. Vexar raged in private session with his advisors. We cannot allow such defiance to stand unchallenged. What precisely do you suggest, Chancellor? Asked his chief strategist, her scales showing the pale yellow of concern. Our military cannot penetrate the Earth barrier. Our technology is failing without their maintenance. And now, multiple Council members are questioning our leadership. The humans cannot maintain their isolation forever, Vexar insisted. No civilization thrives in seclusion. With respect, Chancellor, our intelligence suggests otherwise. The network of human settlements appears extensive and self-sufficient, and their technological capabilities clearly exceed our previous assessments. Vexar's political instincts, honed over centuries, recognized the shifting ground beneath his position. The unthinkable was happening. The Council structure that had endured for millennia was fracturing, and his leadership was in jeopardy. In a final bid to maintain control, he called for another emergency session of the full Council. But when he arrived at the Great Chamber, he found the seating arrangement altered. The hierarchical tiers had been replaced by a circular configuration where all representatives sat at the same level. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. The Botanian elder stepped forward. The Reorganization Committee felt this arrangement better reflected the new Council charter being proposed. New charter? By whose authority? By vote of 67% of member worlds, replied the mechanoid representative. The statistical improbability of our current crisis continuing without resolution has necessitated structural adaptation. Vexar recognized defeat when he saw it. His scales dulled to the gray of resignation as he took his newly assigned seat, no longer elevated above the others, but simply one representative among many. The session that followed formalized what had already become reality. Resolution 5502 was not merely rescinded, but repudiated as counter to newly articulated Council principles. The hierarchical category system for member worlds was abolished in favor of a collaborative framework. And most significantly, a delegation was appointed to attempt communication with Earth. 6 months after the isolation event began, a small vessel approached the quantum barrier surrounding the Sol system. Unlike previous military attempts, this ship carried representatives from 7 different species, including former critics of Earth, like the Vorax captain Ron Baker, whose experience at Proxima Station had transformed him into an unexpected advocate for human perspectives. They transmitted a simple message: "We come seeking dialogue, not compliance. The Council has changed. We ask that you witness this change and consider renewed engagement." For 3 days, there was no response. The delegation waited patiently at the edge of the barrier, their vessel's systems maintained by knowledge gained from human sanctuary stations. Then, without warning, the barrier before them thinned, creating a passage just large enough for their ship to traverse. As they carefully navigated through, they received coordinates for a meeting on Earth's moon. The delegation landed at Armstrong Base, the historic site of humanity's first lunar settlement, now expanded into a diplomatic facility. They were greeted not by armed guards, but by a welcoming committee led by Ambassador Maya Harrison herself. "Welcome to lunar soil," she said, performing the traditional Earth greeting of an extended hand. Captain Baker, as the delegation's appointed speaker, completed the gesture with a careful handshake, a movement his species had never naturally evolved, but had practiced extensively for this moment. "We come with humility and hope," he said. "Both excellent foundations for dialogue," Maya replied with a measured smile. "Please, follow me." The conference that followed lasted 7 days. Earth representatives, including President Okafor, presented detailed evidence of their quiet contributions to galactic infrastructure over 60 years. The delegation shared the profound changes restructuring the Council, changes catalyzed by Earth's withdrawal, but rooted in long-standing inequities that many had recognized, but few had challenged. On the final day, President Okafor addressed the assembled representatives directly. Earth did not isolate itself to punish or control others, but because true cooperation cannot exist within a framework of domination. We believe in a galaxy where civilizations support each other, not through imposed hierarchies, but through recognition of each other's sovereignty and unique contributions. She paused, looking at each delegate in turn. "The changes you have described are significant. The dismantling of the category system, the reorganization of council voting procedures, the new emphasis on technological exchange rather than control. These suggest a genuine evolution toward the kind of community we had hoped to join 60 years ago." Captain Baker spoke for the delegation. "We cannot undo decades of misunderstanding in a single meeting, but we can commit to a new path forward. The Council requests that Earth consider ending its isolation and helping to stabilize the systems that are still failing across our shared galaxy." President Okafor nodded thoughtfully. "We are prepared to assist with critical infrastructure and humanitarian needs immediately. The full dissolution of the quantum barrier will require more extensive negotiations and demonstrated commitment to the reforms you've described." She extended her hand to Baker. "But today marks the beginning of that process. Not a return to the past, but the creation of something better." 3 years later, Maya Harrison stood again in the Council chamber on Centauri Prime. The space had been physically reconstructed, the hierarchical tiers replaced by a truly circular arrangement where all representatives could see each other as equals. The transparent dome remained, but now supplemented by a remarkable Earth contribution, a 3-dimensional projection system that allowed representatives to observe real-time conditions on any member world, bringing context and immediacy to their deliberations. The quantum barrier around Earth had been gradually reduced, allowing increasing levels of travel and communication while maintaining the capability for rapid reactivation if needed. A capability the Council had formally recognized as Earth's sovereign right. More remarkably, the hidden network of human colonies had been officially acknowledged and integrated into galactic maps and treaties. What had once been seen as deception was now recognized as prudent self-preservation in an uncertain environment. Other species, inspired by the human example, had begun establishing their own independent settlements, creating a more distributed and resilient galactic civilization. Most significantly, the technology-sharing protocols that had once been used to control developing worlds had been replaced by collaborative research initiatives, where all participants retained sovereignty over their contributions. The mechanoids, surprisingly, had become strong advocates for this approach, their logical processes recognizing the superior outcomes of genuine cooperation over hierarchical control. As Maya prepared to address the council regarding a new educational exchange program, she caught sight of a familiar figure, Captain Baker, now serving as the Vorax representative after Chancellor Vexar's government had collapsed under the weight of public disapproval. Their eyes met briefly across the chamber, and Baker offered the hint of a nod, acknowledgement from a former adversary turned ally. Maya returned the gesture before beginning her presentation. The crisis of Earth's isolation had forced a painful but necessary evolution. The galaxy had learned that true civilization couldn't be built on dominance and extraction, but required mutual respect and cooperation. Some species had adapted to this realization more quickly than others, but the trajectory was clear. As she spoke to the assembled representatives, Maya reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this moment. Earth hadn't sought to reshape the galaxy, only to protect its own sovereignty and dignity. But in standing firm on those principles, humanity had catalyzed a transformation that benefited countless worlds. The quantum barrier that had once isolated Earth was now maintained only as a thin monitoring shell, a reminder rather than a barrier. But its most important function had already been served. It had created the space for a new understanding to emerge, not through conquest or compliance, but through the withdrawal of support that had never been properly valued until it was gone. When Maya concluded her address, the council chamber filled with the diverse sounds of approval from dozens of species. Not perfect harmony, but a genuine chorus of distinct voices, finding common purpose. Earth had not sought to lead the galaxy, but by asserting its right to chart its own course, it had helped unlock a better path for all. "We planted the seeds of freedom," Maya thought as she acknowledged the council's response. "And now, the universe grows stronger than ever before."